Hello and welcome back, everyone. It is just another day in the life as a military wife, and I am so excited to tell you everything I learned at RootsTech and all of my experiences, but we don't have 3 days, so I'm going to narrow it down to the things that impacted me the most, and a lot of that had to do with interacting with you, fellow military families, veterans, and just getting to talk to the military community in that setting was absolutely amazing. And I cannot wait to share with you what I learned and experienced and all my takeaways. So let's dive into it. As always, I'm your host, Sam Wolf, and you're listening to Life of a Military Wife. So what a lot of you are aware of is that I have been doing interviews of military veterans for a while. I also have interviewed military spouses. And that's because I feel like every one of their stories matters. And I feel like that each person has something to contribute to the conversation in regards to transition, handling different situations, and we can learn from each other and gain strength from each other's stories. What you might not also be aware of is the fact that I've been working on recording my family and my husband's family's military family history for 12 years now. And I'm hoping to eventually get them all combined into a book. Well, I was talking to a lot of people who work as military historians and are veterans and just in the family history sphere, but military included in their focus. And I began to realize the sheer magnitude of the project I had undertaken. I really do feel strongly about sharing and keeping and recording those stories of military veterans. I feel like it can help bring healing and bring families closer. And it's just an important thing to have for generations to come. I take a lot of strength from personal stories I have of ancestors who fought in both the Revolution and the Mexican American War because they teach me a lot about resiliency and just different aspects of how to handle problems in life. And I'm so grateful that those records and stories were preserved for my family so that I could have that. But I know that those stories are just disappearing every single day because they're not being recorded. And here, just to give you an example, let's break this down for you. There are approximately 18 million veterans in the United States currently, and that is from the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard. And that's just a lot. That's an absolutely astronomical number. And specifically, there's approximately 50,000 to 100,000 World War II veterans left alive. In Korea, from the Korean War, we've got approximately 400 to 600,000. In Vietnam, about 5.5 million to 6 million. And then we get into the 9/11 more recent vets, Gulf War, and so on. And we got millions and millions and millions and millions of those. So it's just mind blowing the sheer magnitude of stories that have not yet been preserved. And we are losing some of these veterans every single day. Our World War II veterans, of course, are aging. They're like in their 90s and hundreds. Sorry, they're like 100 years old anyway. But at least our Vietnam veterans and our Korean War veterans are also getting significantly older. They tend to be in their 80s and 90s as well. Or sorry, yeah, 80s and 90s. And then the Vietnam War veterans are about 70s and 80s. And even for those who are not as old, like our post 9/11 vets who are in their 30s to 60 range, they've been exposed to a lot of chemicals with the burn pits, Agent Orange. So the Vietnam, Korean War veterans, we may lose a lot of them really young because of cancer and other things. And so there is a expiration date on being able to get these stories recorded in their own voice And we have such an amazing technology. Anyway, I ran into a lot of other organizations that were helping work on this project, and it made me feel a sense of relief because even if I myself interviewed a different veteran every single day for 30 years, I would only get to over 10,000 of them. There's no way on earth I could possibly interview every single one of these veterans, and every single one of their stories matter. And so that really struck a chord with me, especially as I got the opportunity to just stop and talk to these different veterans and hear what they're doing now in their lives and the organizations they're a part of, and how some of them are working to help preserve the records of fellow service members or help people find their family's military service records so they can uncover and connect their family history and be a part of that experience that their ancestor had. There is just so much going on, and it is complicated. Finding those records because there was a major fire at the DoD storage facility where it has a lot of those personal record files, and a lot were lost. So, doing military family research here in the United States is more complicated than it would have been otherwise. And the more of these stories we can record, the more of these memories and experiences we can hold on to and preserve, the better, because there really is a lot of value. And anyway, I can't say it enough. Everyone's story is important. One of the individuals I ran into was a lovely lady named Kim, and you might have heard of her family or seen the photo that went viral of her family, but her family had 9 of the sons serve in World War II, and the picture of the mom with the 9 boys in their uniforms has been all over social media. That's the Addams family. Now, there was another son, and he was too young to serve. That wasn't in the picture, but it's just the fact that they were willing to send all of their sons, that all their sons answered that call of duty, and they were all over the world. The absolute just enormity of these stories that that one family has, and all of the different perspectives and experiences they accumulated in the different branches of service and the different theaters of war, because World War II was vast. And just that family alone has a treasure trove of first person experiences and accounts that, unless they get recorded, will never come to light. And I'm really excited because I'm working with Kim to hopefully interview several of the surviving brothers on the podcast. I've also spoke to several other veterans that were there, gave them my business card, and hopefully they'll be able to talk to me about what they're doing. I met an amazing military spouse who is working with one of these family history organizations, and the group she works with, their web product is free for everyone to use, and she's very excited and into it, and I hope to have her on to talk about this project she's doing to help people with their family history. Additionally, I met several different organizations that record military family stories and the veterans, everybody's. They do more than just military. I was one of the only ones there that focuses primarily in on military, but I ran into at least 4 other organizations doing this, and they're not competition. They're my partners because, like I mentioned before, I cannot do this myself. And we have to be a team. And so I'm really excited and hoping to in the future, I'm working with them to collaborate, get their information out to you guys, because some of them do video interviews and then some of them do audio interviews like me. And so, and one does full scale documentaries. And I think that the more options people have, the better. And maybe people will want video, and some people will only want audio, and that's okay. And we need to just be flexible because these talking about the PTSD and the trauma and the experiences and the stories is hard. And that's important that the veterans feel comfortable in the situation and they're not being pushed or um, pressured. But at the same time, it can be very healing. I had the opportunity recently to watch a documentary on the Navajo code talkers, which is very close to my heart because I am from the state of Arizona. And I didn't realize this, but evidently in Navajo culture, you don't talk about war and war experiences when you come home. It's a huge taboo. And I'm not sure I could completely and clearly convey the reasons why in and do it justice. Do so. I'm gonna not try on the why, but it is a part of their culture, and so convincing them to go back to the locations where they fought and to share this information and to make this documentary wasn't easy for them. But in the end, it was a huge bonding experience for them and their family members who participated in the documentaries with them. And it also, several of them said it helped them find closure and peace from the things that they had experienced. And I feel like they don't always veterans that I'm talking about now at this point in general, don't always understand the value of the stories and the experiences they had. There were so many times I was talking to veterans throughout the weekend, and they're like, "Oh, I just did my duty. Oh, it's not a big deal." Do you know how often I hear that from service members and veterans? "Oh, it's no big deal." Everybody has a story that's worth hearing. Everybody has done something, even if it's just stand in the breach and be there in case of emergency. But thankfully, no emergency came. That is still important. That still has value. That's still a sacrifice because you still missed out on holidays and birthdays and anniversaries with your loved ones, and it's because you valued this nation and its freedoms and the citizens in this country and were willing to make that sacrifice. So I want every veteran to know that their sacrifice matters. I want every veteran to realize that they have something to tell and share that would be a blessing and a benefit to others. Maybe it's just a support for other veterans, helping them understand how they can handle the things that they're struggling with. Maybe they're struggling to transition from military life to civilian life, and hearing how you handled it can help them know how to handle it. Maybe they're struggling with PTSD and they don't have family who understands, but when they hear your story, they can understand they're not alone. So even if it's just to buoy up and support current and future veterans, and service members, as well as their family, that in and of itself is priceless. But the other thing, like I've mentioned before, that it can do is allow those families to build and strengthen their relationships and to better understand each other. It helps the non military service members of the family develop empathy for the things that their service member is going through. And that is priceless. That is worth it. And so I'm really grateful for all of the different organizations and people who are joining me on the crusade to save these stories and to share these stories because they do have value and purpose and they are helpful and a blessing to all who encounter them. I met a really sweet, veteran who was very, very talkative and very, very kind, and he did, reenactments. And another one was one of my teachers for one of the classes on how to do military research, and he was a veteran himself. And I was really grateful for the information he was able to give me that will help me find more of those records of my family's military history so that I can finish the book that I'm writing. Another individual I was speaking to, her brother is a recent veteran, and they're all trying to be supportive, but they just don't know what to do. And I started talking to her, and she was really excited to hear that there are people who care about her brother and her brother's experiences. And she was excited to tell him about it. I had another lady who asked for a business card because she wanted to share it with her family member and see if he would be interested in having his story shared. There are so many of these that I want to do, and I want all of the veterans and military families who are listening to know if you want to be on the podcast, fabulous. I'd love to have your stories out here on the podcast to share. But if all you want is to have someone to talk to about the experience and to record it, because you can't, it's hard to sometimes tell family directly, but you want them to know the story and it's an indirect way to share it. I'm more than willing to just interview you and get your information and the interview back to your family. And it doesn't have to go on the podcast. But I also want you to know that there are organizations out there like the Library of Congress that desperately want these stories. They want to be able to preserve this part of our American heritage. And so I really am excited about what they're doing. And I want to just tell you a little bit about it. Evidently, the Library of Congress has a Veterans History Project. And then also with RootsTech, I met a couple other people um, who are work for organizations that are collecting military histories. They're collecting them, they're not doing them themselves. So they rely on people like me to do the interviews. And so, if you are interested in being a part of the Veterans History Project for the Library of Congress or any of these other organizations contributing to their collections, I would love to interview you. I would love to be a part of it. Family Search is another organization that is collecting these interviews. And yeah, and there's also, like I said, there's lots of other companies doing it too. So, whatever format works, we can do them virtually. For everyone who's been on my podcast already knows that 90% of the interviews I do are virtual. Thank goodness for the technology we have that allows us to do those things. And just keep looking. Some are free, some cost money, but all are available to help. Like I said before, there are 17 to 18 million veterans. And even if I interviewed one every day for the rest of my life, there's no way I could do it on my own. And so, as a community, we need to start stepping up and recording these stories. And if nothing else, maybe, hopefully, this episode will encourage you to reach out to a family member who served or talk to your spouse. Start recording people's stories because we don't know when we're going to lose our wonderful veterans. We don't know what's going to happen. And it's better to do it now, sooner rather than later, when the memories are more clear and they're able to articulate them well. And we have time to really grow and build those conversations and those bonds. And I look forward to this. I am really excited to be a part of this. And there's a lot. If you guys are interested in learning more about how to do military family history research, please let me know. I am more than willing to share that information with you guys. I received a lot of really great handouts and pointers. There are professionals, there are veterans actually, professionals, and they're genealogists, and they help and will actually go to the archives in St. Louis and look through them for you, or go to the other archives and look through them for you. And so, if that's something you want to do, that you can pay them to do that. But if you want to do it yourselves, there's some definite policies and procedures that it's just important to know. And just, oh my goodness, it's just so exciting. It's so amazing to have the privilege and the honor to hear these stories and to speak to these service members and to their families, to see people who value and appreciate the sacrifices made by our service members day in and day out is just amazing and awe-inspiring, and it was so, so exciting. And if anything that I took away from RootsTech, that is one of them. We are not alone in the military community. People genuinely care and want to hear the stories of our amazing veterans and their families. And that's the other thing. Military spouses, I still want to hear your stories too. There is still strength. There's still strength that we can get from military spouses. There's lots of strength we can get from military spouses. And I am so internally grateful for my 4 or 5 times great grandmother who was the military spouse. And her husband went out and served in the Mexican American War. And she was left to hold down the home front. And I have talked about her before on this podcast. But the fact that she kept a record and that record helped me and has helped me and continues to help me through hard times in this journey of being a military spouse. There is power in sharing our stories, and we need to continue to uplift and strengthen each other by doing that and not being afraid and not belittling them and not thinking that, you know what, I don't have anything to say, because you do. So please, 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 if you have a family member who is a veteran, if you are a veteran, if you are a military spouse, let me be the person who helps get your story out. I want to share your story with the world. Help me help you make that possible. So that is my experience with RootsTech. It was absolutely fabulous. I am so grateful for my husband for making it happen, because I've wanted to go for years and never thought it was going to happen. And if this is the type of content that you are interested in or excited about, please like, share, subscribe. Let's stick it to the algorithm and make this be something they can't ignore. That military families and the voices of our military veterans are going to be heard. I am so grateful for all of you. Without you, my wonderful listeners, none of this would be possible. And so thank you. Let's continue to be the good we want to see in the world. And as always, I am your host, Sam Wolf, and you've been listening to Life of a Military Wife.